Dynasty rookie drafts are wrapping up, so I'm bringing you 5 players that you must be buying in Dynasty fantasy football, starting it off with Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And of course, in the NFL draft, we see Travis Hunter go pick 2 to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who traded up for Travis Hunter. And then in the following press conference, Liam Cohen said, hey, Travis Hunter is going to be primarily playing wide receiver. And all of a sudden, everyone got super excited for Travis Hunter's overall Dynasty fantasy football value. But then a lot of people started to say, hey, well, what's happening with Brian Thomas Jr., who last season, let us not forget, Brian Thomas Jr. put up wide receiver 11 points per game numbers with 16.7 in the 17 games that he played, 133 targets, 87 receptions. And people are now going to be saying, okay, well, crap. Brian Thomas Jr. was wide receiver 20 on a target share last year with a 25.5% target share. Is Travis Hunter going to be eating into Brian Thomas's overall target share? And my answer is no. There's a ton of vacated targets here for the Jacksonville Jaguars with Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram out of town. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is still going to be the clear alpha, but even if he's not, even if he's 1B, there's still going to be enough targets for both Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter to go around. And so when we're looking at Brian Thomas Jr.'s overall value here on Keep Trade Cut, he has stayed consistent. He has remained as wide receiver 5, of course, ahead of guys like Puka Nacua and Amon-Ra St. Brown, behind CeeDee Lamb, behind Malik Neighbors. And I understand right now kind of being valued right around that 101 range. I understand the worry that Brian Thomas Jr. might not be providing the top tier value that he kind of was projected to have, but Liam Cohen clearly wants to have this passing attack be the focal point of this offense. Trevor Lawrence, of course, needs to take the next step, and I think that's kind of the biggest argument is what's going to be happening with Trevor Lawrence, because they're surrounding him with all these weapons. They're surrounding him with a head coach that we absolutely love. Are they going to be able to have that high efficiency offense? Because I think that's what the worry is when we start to compare a Travis Hunter, Brian Thomas Jr. situation to a guy like a T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. You weren't worried necessarily about if both of those guys were going to be able to coincide because we're like, hey, Joe Burrow's going to throw the ball enough. There's going to be enough targets to go around. I think there's a little bit of concern, though, that Trevor Lawrence is, of course, not Joe Burrow. And so there's a little bit of worry there. But when we start to look at Dynasty Daddy and kind of see trades that have gone down for Brian Thomas Jr., we got a deal that went down. It's the 105, the 205, and the 305 for Brian Thomas. Give me that side. I understand maybe at the 105, you're looking at like a Tet McMillan, a Trevion Henderson. The 205, we're probably talking somewhere like maybe a Trey Harris, a Cam Scatterbo, and then, whoever you can get at the 305. But for me, I do want the Brian Thomas Jr. side 100%. I'll be taking the Brian Thomas Jr. side there. So definitely be going and trying to see what the Brian Thomas Jr. owner is thinking about, especially with Travis Hunter being added. They might not be as excited about Brian Thomas Jr.'s outlook, but I'm still buying into Brian Thomas Jr. Believe he is a top 5 Dynasty wide receiver and could potentially go even higher depending on the type of season that he has in 2025. The next player you need to be targeting in your Dynasty leagues, if you don't already have him, it's going to be Rashee Rice for the Kansas City Chiefs. And you're not going to meet someone in these Dynasty streets that love Rashee Rice more than me. Now, I understand a little bit of the concern with Rashee Rice. Dude is coming off a torn LCL that happened in week 4, but this wasn't an ACL, and I understand. Very similar recovery time, very similar injury. But when we're looking at Rashee Rice overall keep trade cut value, this guy's been anywhere between wide receiver 16 to wide receiver 20. And last year, in the very short amount of games that he played, he averaged 16.2 fantasy points per game. Dude was an absolute baller, was wide receiver 3 in points per game in those first, essentially 3.5 games that he played. We're looking at him coming into this season. What do the Kansas City Chiefs do? Nothing. Really nothing. They re-signed Hollywood Brown. They still have Xavier Worthy, who took some steps later on in the season, but Rashee Rice is going to be sliding into that same role that we saw him in last season. And that's something that I want to be buying into, because if Rashee Rice played a full season, we could be talking about Rashee Rice somewhere in that like Dynasty wide receiver 5 to 7 range, which is kind of where he was heading before the injury. And I think a lot of people are not kind of baking that into his overall cost, because right now, like I said, wide receiver 18, he's going around players like T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, Romo Dunze, Zay Flowers. If I can trade a Devontae Smith, Romo Dunze, and go get a Rashee Rice, 100%. Even a guy like T. Higgins, who I know T. Higgins is kind of undervalued right now. especially since he got that contract. He is with Joe Burrow. I still want me some Rashee Rice. I think there's ultimate level upside here. And I understand there's a lot of concerns about, hey, what's going to happen with the suspension and this injury. Even if he's suspended for 4 games, or even if the first 4 games are super slow, I still want me some Rashee Rice. Now, when we start to take a look over here on Dynasty Daddy on some trades that have happened recently, there's some juicy ones that I want to talk about. Someone traded the 103 for Rashee Rice and the 201. Now, this is an interesting one because let's say at the 103, you're kind of deciding between Travis Hunter or Ted McMillan. Let's say Amarian Hampton, Ashton Genty went with the first 2 picks. You're then able to take a guy like a Rashee Rice, who, maybe you have Travis Hunter and Ted McMillan ahead, but then you're able at this 201, potentially maybe a guy that I really like an RJ Harvey falls. You get a guy like a Tyler Warren, a Colson Loveland, like someone that shouldn't fall to the 201, but does. You get maybe even a Jackson Dart, depending. Like I said, all these guys are kind of in that range. All of a sudden, I really like that Rashee Rice side because, like we said, if Rashee Rice is able to even return any sort of value into like a wide receiver 14 in Dynasty, which isn't crazy to kind of project and think, that's a slam dunk for the Rashee Rice side. And I am buying all into the hype of Rashee Rice. Go try to make some trades for Rashee Rice. I still have him slotted in as wide receiver 14 in my own Dynasty rankings, and honestly, that's a little low. I'd love to push him a little bit higher than that, and I think there's 100% a chance that he can be getting higher. But if you like Dynasty Fantasy Football, hit that like and subscribe button. We are on the way to 20,000 subscribers here on the DLF YouTube channel. Appreciate you. Me, Addison, and Justin are bringing you guys the best content, so make sure you continue to stay locked in. The next guy you need to be buying in Dynasty Fantasy Football, it's going to be Chuba Hubbard, running back for the Carolina Panthers. And what was kind of surprising, and a lot of people were not really excited for the Carolina Panthers because a lot of people were worried, hey, are they going to take another running back? Well, they don't. Chuba Hubbard slides in right now on Keep Trade Cut as RB21, overall player 92. And I've talked about in all of my trade videos this offseason, I don't like to buy running backs before the NFL draft. But after the NFL draft, you better believe I'm going and shopping and maybe getting some discounts, getting some values. Chuba Hubbard's 100% someone that I'm targeting right now because they didn't add anybody but Trevor Etienne in the NFL draft. Now, this depth chart for the Carolina Panthers, we got Chuba Hubbard, we got Rico Dowdle, and then we got Trevor Etienne. Jonathan Brooks, God rest his soul, is going to be out another year with another ACL injury. For me, at RB21, give me a shot because guys that are going ahead of him in Dynasty rankings right now on Keep Trade Cut, RJ Harvey, Derek Henry, Caleb Johnson. Behind Chuba Hubbard, we're talking about David Montgomery, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, sliding right in along the lines. And let's not forget that Chuba Hubbard got essentially, it was a 3-year deal. It's more like a 2-year extension for the Carolina Panthers that happened last season during the season when everything was going super great. I love me some Chuba Hubbard as a guy that last year, RB13 on a points per game basis, so he's a high-end RB2. And maybe if he gets a few more touchdowns, we're talking to have him as a back-end RB1. I'm excited to see what Dave Canales can do in year 2 with this offense. We got Ted McMillan sliding in on the outside. We got Bryce Young kind of getting his confidence back at the end of last season. Can he continue that momentum? Can he continue that trajectory? I think if those things line up, we could be looking at Chuba Hubbard being a great value, especially if you're a contender needing some RB help. You're essentially going to have to be paying RB2 prices to go get a guy that I do think has RB1 overall potential. Let's talk about some trades that have gone down for Chuba Hubbard over on the Dynasty Daddy trade database. We have the 103 traded for Chuba Hubbard and the 106. Listen, I love me the 103, but if you are a super like RB needy team and at the 103, you are going to be taking a guy like a Trevion Henderson, why not wait until the 106 and see if you get a Quinshon Judkins and Chuba Hubbard? Like you kind of get like double value there at the running back position. And I 100% love that deal if you needed some running back help. Another deal that has gone down is like the 108 and the 208 for Chuba Hubbard and the 111. Like this to me screams, what the heck? Like maybe Travis Hunter fell. Like I don't know why someone would do this deal. Give me some Chuba Hubbard. I'm huge into Chuba Hubbard heading into 2025. My next player that you need to be trying to trade for heading into the 2025 season, it is going to be Tyreek Hill. And I think this is crazy to say that Tyreek Hill is somebody that we're trying to buy. Like Tyreek Hill, I understand he's kind of at the twilight of his career, a guy that is 31.2 years old. We saw a major down year last year, going from wide receiver 2 points per game in 2023 all the way down to wide receiver 29 last season. And I know buying into wide receivers post 30 that kind of have that gap or that decrease in production is super risky. I want that to be clear. This is a risky buy. But as somebody that I don't think Tyreek Hill necessarily lost a whole step, maybe it was a half step, I want to be investing into Tyreek Hill. And as somebody that needs to provide for his growing family, let me go target some Tyreek Hill. Because Tyreek Hill, as much as we're saying down year last year, still only wide receiver 36. Like, his value has absolutely cratered to the point that I want to be taking a shot, going behind guys like a Mike Evans, a Brandon Ayuk, ahead of guys like a Jerry Jeudy, a Ricky Pearsall, Chris Godwin. Now, Tyreek Hill, upside, top 5 wide receiver. Downside is that he's cooked, that he's aged. Maybe he's a wide receiver 3. I don't think that's the case. It's probably somewhere in the middle. But even if Tyreek Hill finishes as wide receiver 14 or wide receiver 15 on a points per game basis this next season, still being able to buy him at this dynasty price as wide receiver 36 makes me excited, especially considering the fact that last year, Tyreek Hill, only 122 targets, 81 receptions, 959 yards. I mean, literally almost down 50 total targets from the previous 2 seasons. And I think maybe he gets back up to somewhere around 140 to 150. I'm not saying he's getting all the way back up to 170, because as we've seen, they do have Jalen Waddle. They added Nick Westbrook-Akine, Mr. Touchdown Machine himself. But hopefully Tua and Tyreek can both remain healthy this season, and I think that's going to play a big part into the overall production for Tyreek Hill. Because, I mean, if we're looking, he was still wide receiver 16 on targets, still wide receiver 38 on a target share with a 21.9% target share. Wasn't alpha level numbers like we had seen previously from Tyreek Hill, because like in 2023, when we start to look at him, he had a 33.7% target share, which was number 1 in the NFL. So definitely had some dips in the overall production. But if you're able to go buy into a guy like a Tyreek Hill, I do think that's going to be valuable to your overall dynasty team, especially if you're trying to push the chips in and compete. Because there's a few different things that you can do as a competitor. You can either go invest in the running back position, or you can take some high upside swings in your wide receiver 3, your flex spots, and Tyreek Hill's somebody that I'm easily trying to do that for. If we're looking at some trades that have recently gone down over on Dynasty Daddy, we got Tyreek Hill for the 209 and the 402. Come on. That should not even be legal. We got Tyreek Hill for Jerry Jeudy. Give me both of those sides for Tyreek Hill. Someone traded Mike Evans for Tyreek Hill. Listen, I love me Mr. 1010. But if you wanted to spice it up and you wanted ultimate level upside, I could see why you might want the Tyreek Hill side there. Someone traded Zay Flowers for Mike Evans and Tyreek Hill, kind of splitting Zay Flowers into 2 competitive assets. I do like that. So I want to be taking a shot on Tyreek Hill. I'm trying to buy into Tyreek Hill everywhere that I can, because I understand there's a little bit of risk, but give me some Tyreek Hill if you need some production at the wide receiver position. My last and final buy of this video, it's going to be another running back. It's going to be Isiah Pacheco for the Kansas City Chiefs. And yes, Kareem Hunt resigns with the Kansas City Chiefs, but I still want me some Isiah Pacheco, because right now his dynasty value has done what any 26-year-old running back's value typically does. It kind of craters out. Dude is sliding in right now as the overall RB28 on Keep Trade Cut, overall player 126. He is going in the same range as guys as Tyrone Tracy, Brian Robinson, Zach Charbonnet, DeAndre Swift, Trey Benson. And while, yes, this is probably valid based on his injury history last year and kind of his age, I still want to be taking a shot on Isiah Pacheco, because I do think he can return to form. He can retake over that lead backfield, because last year, let's be clear, in the 7 games that he played, 8.1 fantasy points per game, that wasn't great. But the year before that, when he kind of fully took over in 2023, 15.3 fantasy points per game, 205 rushing attempts, 935 yards, and 9 total touchdowns. And as much as I love me some Rashee Rice, I do think this offense is going to continue to do what it's done well, and that's run the football. And so with them not adding anybody else significant in this backfield, I do think that's going to kind of give Isiah Pacheco a chance to get back to doing what he really did well. And I understand we had the broken fibula in week 2. He had a rib injury in week 17. He plays aggressive. He gets hurt. But I still want to be taking a shot on Isiah Pacheco, especially if you need some RB2, RB3, some veteran production on the end of your bench if you're trying to push the chips in, because at this current moment, you really only need to trade what's kind of being worth like a mid to late second type value in your rookie drafts. And when we start to see some trades that have gone down for Isiah Pacheco for the 206. Now, at the 206, in a lot of my drafts, guys like a Cam Scatterboo have been off the board. So you're kind of staring down the barrel of like, if you need a running back, am I going to draft a guy like a Dylan Sampson? Am I going to draft a guy like a Cam Scatterboo? You know, one of these mid-tier wide receivers? Or am I going to go get a guy like an Isiah Pacheco? Someone traded the 203 for Isiah Pacheco. I do think that's probably a little bit too much for Isiah Pacheco. I'd rather potentially, you know, take a swing on a Cam Scatterboo there. So Isiah Pacheco is someone 100% that I'm trying to get. Definitely go target him. Like I said, Chuba Hubbard, Isiah Pacheco, if you're contenders, or if you're just trying to get some running back points in that RB2, RB3 spot. I think both of those players are guys that I am targeting. But like I said, guys, appreciate you guys for tuning into this video. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.